Episode 6 of Shadow House second season felt very off. It's like one of those episodes where as you're watching it, it really feels like, didn't we already cover this? Wasn't this already covered back here? I know it could be a possibility of them just trying to more confirm it with the characters themselves, like they're not all in the same loop. Or possibly just me thinking that things were revealed when it was actually just me speculating on a lot of it. So, like I said, very weird episode, but still a good episode overall. Just a lot of kind of insights into the mindset of the living dolls. I think for a while now, I've kind of sort of been kind of wanting the living dolls themselves to start really reflecting on their situation they're dealing with. And we got a lot of that from Emiliko's perspective. Having Emilko and Sean, during the time that Kate is meeting with everybody, go out and try to fill out this map. And at some point, having Emilko really sit down and go, what does it actually mean to be a human? Like, if I'm actually human, then what is it like in the outside world? Is it a better place to be? I think Sean and Emilko are both kind of saying the same thing here, is they don't really know, is it a good thing that I become a human? Am I going to be better off in the village? I mean, here, yes, we get scraps, we get, less food than our masters, but we're still technically fed. We're still comfortable here. What is it like outside of there? And then, yes, having this goofy little thing where each one of them try to figure out what each person would be in the outside world. Emilko wants to be, would I be a farmer or could I bake bread, obviously? Getting into how Ricky and Sean might be of royalty, and no, maybe Sean might have been somebody from more like maybe a merchant or something like that, which was really fun. It's kind of fun to see these characters if they were actually normal humans, not under the thumb of the Shadow family. One interesting thing that was actually brought up during this conversation was Sean bringing up that, again, this is the part where I thought maybe because it was me speculating or just them finally confirming it. But that, yeah, the shadows themselves would have been birthed from the living dolls. So in a sense, it's a reverse aspect, which again, that was a cool reveal that we had from the first season, was this idea that, wow, this whole time we're seen as the master shadows and the living doll humans, you have this idea that these are supposed to mimic the shadows. But in fact, it's the other way around. The shadows themselves are mimicking the living dolls. They're mimicking the humans. So they're trying to become humans. And so yes, he does confirm at this point, yeah, technically John at some point revealed to me that his memories only go so far back to just before I arrived and we met each other, which could assume the idea that the reverse is the effect, that the Shadow family members are a spawn from them. Kate is a spawn from Emilko. Patrick is a spawn from Ricky. And John, in this case, is a spawn from Sean, which was cool because and I never really thought about this. I honestly never really thought about this. Yeah, technically they were probably given human names. The living dolls are supposed to be given a name by the Shadow family members, but the assumption here is because Emilko, Lou, Sean, all of them don't know their memories, their names could have been that. I don't know if they confirmed that with the whole telling a backstory by Kate in the first episode or in the first season. But yeah, at the point that the shadow was born, they could have taken the name of the living dolls, wiped their memory, and then let them assign them a name. So Sean, I'm already saying it. So Sean here is essentially saying, so I'm John. And then, pointing to Emilko, then yes, technically you're Kate, which is, again, a really interesting thing to really think about. I don't know if it was really talked about in the first season or not, but yeah, I technically do question the same thing that Sean questions. Why does Kate know as much as she does? Who told Kate all this information? Again, I don't know if they ever revealed in the first season if Kate revealed how she got that information, but Kate does know a lot of what's happening behind the scenes. But again, like I said before, despite the fact that this is a lot of information that I've already speculated on or has already been revealed, it is nice to see, again, the living dolls themselves really reflect on what it's like to actually be a human. Would it be better out in the outside world? Would they, if they recalled their memories from the previous world or their previous life, how would it affect their current life? Emilko is really worried about that because she only knows happiness that she's had in this particular place. But she's afraid that, once I regain my memories of my previous life, am I going to forget everything here? And this is when we have a brief moment where she does recall something. The moment the night sky is revealed from the clouds, she goes, oh, I remember this. I've never seen that here. So that must be a memory from my previous life. I'm recalling something. A logic jump, and again, something that I thought we already revealed at this point, was Sean realizing at some point, wait, the veiled dolls wear mourning outfits. Like the outfits they're wearing are outfits you'd wear when you're mourning somebody. So it could be easy to assume that once Shirley was taken away, once Shirley was removed because she couldn't do what all of these shadows are supposed to do. The shadows themselves are supposed to mimic the humanity of the living dolls. And because Rum never really expressed much, Shirley never gained expression, never gained consciousness, and thus she was a failure, and she was gotten rid of. And his assumption here is because the veiled dolls wear these mourning outfits, the assumption here is that Rum is one of these veiled dolls, in which, yes, Emilico here is like, okay, let's go around and let's check all their faces. I gotta find rum. Like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's gonna raise suspicion. Cool stuff, though. Again, just really kind of having them really, I guess, reflect on all the speculations and thought processes that we've had at this point. We don't give Emilico much attention, the idea of her really thinking on things. She's usually the bubbly character that doesn't really think about things too much. She rushes into things. But at the same time, she does have these thoughts of insecurities, technically, about how her life is going to shift. But yes, after this, they run into the Cloaked Figure, which, that was a disappointment. I was like, here we go. We're going to get into some stuff. Nope. The Cloaked Figure just literally says, yeah, you're as interesting as always. And then it says something effective, I'm not your enemy, don't worry, but I'm also not your ally, so don't think of me like that. And then disappears. So that was I was like, yes, here we go. We're going to get into the Cloak Figure. Give us something to chew on with this. Now, this was a really, really cool part because it did kind of trick me a little bit, honestly. I know there's probably some people out there like, yeah, I've seen this coming. But no, we have the Star Bearers show up with the coffee again. They still had 4 days left before they would normally get more coffee. And here they are with coffee. And I should have seen this. Coming because obviously the Star Bearers are not wanting the outside to know that all this stuff has happened. They don't want them to know about the Phantom. They don't want them to know about the Cloak Figure. And yes, they wouldn't want them to know about the fact that they just dropped Lord Grandfather's precious coffee. So as they come in, and I completely thought, well, they just sped that process up really quickly. But no, they apparently came in with all of these Shadow Masters and fed them essentially fake coffee, not Lord Godfather's coffee. Actually, and what they're kind of speculating at this point was Benjamin's soot, or at least his ability to control them, to heighten their emotions, to push their emotions high, to get them excited, to rejoice, and to relieve any fears they have of not having done this ceremony. And so this makes Kate believe that Emilico is under the influence, but she's not being obedient. She's jumping around. She's being excited. Her emotions are shot up. So Kate realizes, oh, good. We're not affected. I thought, based on the OP, I'm like, oh, here we go. Here's the part where Emilico is under the influence again. And nope, it went through really quickly. But again, this is speculation on Kate's behalf. It kind of insinuates that Benjamin's ability might be to control emotions, which is funny because who always snaps? Who snaps all the time? Benjamin. This is a guy that has no control over his emotions, so it makes sense. Or at least he's in heightened emotions, which is not really an uncontrollable, but... And this leads us into the last segment of this whole thing, which is John doing some investigation. He goes and works on repairing the wall, which time he's going to try to get some information out of the research team. Something that only Kate can trust him with, which he's excited about. And this leads into an interaction with Jeremiah and Jeremy. And I like how John immediately jumps to conclusion, like, wait, he's been sleeping during the day. That must he needs to get rest so that he can sneak around at night. He's got to be the Cloak Figure. And oh yeah, sure enough, here's a bunch of scorches behind this cloak. It's got to be them. And they play completely into it just to get him worked up to steal some of his soot. Which just, again, gets into a lot of explanations of things that I think we've already kind of gotten a gist of, but just more kind of, again, solidifying it within our knowledge, which is that the scorches themselves are created from the suit, kind of gathering up and dropping and becoming this being. Each one of them have different amount of densities to them, and only the similar densities can merge to each other and create a greater density. But the interesting thing they got into, which we never really gotten much information out of, is how does it get from being a scorch to a phantom? He says, I can't be the Cloak Figure, and I can tell you why. I've tried to make a phantom, and I can't. As much as I combine them, as dense as they become, they never become a phantom. So his belief, Jeremiah's belief, is that it's possibility it's a creation from soot powers, that somebody's able to make them go from being a scorch to being a phantom, which is a really big question mark. Now, I kind of wonder two things. One is if this is going to be something that, yes, that's his speculation, but it's not actually true. It's just something to kind of give us something to think about, but it ends up not being completely 100%, because you would assume that the Scorches have been around for a long time. You assume the Phantoms have been around for a long time. Why would they have all these processes and rules and regulations and strictness to it if only a certain soot power can create them? That would insinuate that there is a soot power that somebody can have, and then every now and then one of them decides to use it for bad things. It doesn't make much sense, unless the Cloak Figure is somebody that's been around for a long time, and they're coming to attack again, creating these phantoms and everything, and thus they have these things in play. Because again, as we learned from Emilico's first appearance in working with the other living dolls, that was a concept they presented at that point. These things can gather and become phantoms. Don't let it do that. The other interesting concept that Jeremiah presents is, what about the soot sickness? How does that work? Well, obviously, that's whenever these soots get inside of a living doll, and it gets inside their stomach, and it controls them. But his mindset is that he believes they do this because he believes that the Scorches themselves desire to have a face. Which is an interesting concept, because if you think about like the whole ceremony to creating the Shadowhouse family members, is them bringing in these humans, wiping their memories, and then bringing these little, well, they're essentially Scorches to them to become a Shadowhouse family member, and then they start mimicking the living dolls to gain their personalities. And yes, technically when Shirley failed, she became this again. And so you can only assume that these are just all Scorches. Like everything around is Scorches. They're all spawns of the Shadowhouse family members as their soot gathers and creates more of these little Scorches that then need to have a living doll or a human given to them to give them a face, yada, yada, yada. And it technically plays into how we see the Shadowhouse family members later, the grown-up ones, they're all able to merge the two together. Yes, as we've seen Edward walking around, he was seen as a living doll, but in actuality, he was a shadow itself with him as well. Eventually, the soot, the shadow member itself, consumes the living doll, and then it technically becomes human. And that kind of wraps up this conversation with their new invention, this thing that has a Scorch inside of it and a little mouse wheel, and then there's a portrait of Nancy in front of it, poor little Nancy picture in front of it that it's chasing after, and it wants to replace the whole coal soot aspect of powering the mansion with these Scorches chasing after a face. And that's it. That's episode 6. Definitely, like I said, it's interesting, again, confirming a lot of things, getting a more perspective of the human side of the living dolls, which I thought was great. But for the most part, just a lot of stuff that I think we were already speculating, which has pretty much been confirmed at this point, just being put on paper, I guess. And technically, I do like the fact that they've represented the question of, how does Kate know so much? What did Kate get information-wise? Kate seems to be an anomaly amongst everything, and I think the only thing that I can think of that might possibly answer that question is if we go back to this concept of the Scorch seeking the face. And again, technically what we have seen with Shirley. What is the possibility that Kate was a Shadowhouse family member, maybe somebody that was of high esteem, maybe somebody that was a grown-up in Grandfather's Wing, and maybe she failed or was destroyed, became a Scorch, and then was applied again to Milico, became a new person, but still retained all of her memories from her previous life and knowledge of what's going on in this particular area. It would explain technically why she's so powerful. And there's a possibility that those with high densities were ones that were Shadowhouse family members before that got reapplied to another doll, which would make sense why they would give them so much favors, because they knew they'd be powerful to begin with, and they can't just discard them. They need to use them again. But we'll see. That's my thoughts on episode 6 of Shadowhouse second season. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment. Let me know what's thought of this episode. Additionally, if you've not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I would greatly appreciate it if you consider supporting us on Patreon, our tips link, or super thanks button down below. Anything you can give is greatly appreciated. It's your guys' support that keeps us going, and y'all take care.